So, welcome back to another episode of the Let's Chat Derbyshire podcast. I'm Luke and I work for the Derbyshire's mental health and suicide prevention team. And today we're joined by Claire. We're going to be discussing around the Baton of Hope, being bereaved by suicide, and a few other sort of topics around that. So we hope that you, enjoy listening to part one of this episode. So Claire, kick us off. Who are you?
So I'm Claire and I am co-lead on the Baton of Hope Derby in Derbyshire, coming to Derby in September on the 13th.
Lovely. So, out of 10, how are you feeling today before we get started?
I think today I am probably a 7. I think throughout the whole process of doing the Baton of Hope, I've been from a 1 to a 10. So it can vary, but no, looking forward to doing this today.
That's good. That's really good. I think 7's a solid number. So it's a Monday morning as well for anyone listening. So I'm not the freshest on a Monday at the best of times. So that's good. At least it's sunny though now, isn't it?
It is.
Just to get us started then, for anyone that doesn't know about the Baton of Hope, what is it?
So the Baton of Hope UK is the UK's largest suicide prevention initiative, and it had its inaugural tour in 2023, and that's how I got involved, as I carried the baton in Birmingham, and it's all about honouring those lost by suicide and enabling workplaces and other people to talk about suicide prevention and mental health more.
That's great. What got you involved in it?
So I lost my dad to suicide 24 years ago this year, and back then there wasn't a lot really around. Nobody really talked about it. I remember my mum being a bit worried about what people think. There was a real stigma. There still is now, but I don't think it's as bad. And there's also a lot more charities and groups out there. So I started to do a little bit of fundraising through Calm, and then I heard about the Baton of Hope and that they were doing the tour. So I looked at where they were going. They weren't coming anywhere local to me, but I found that they were going to Birmingham or Sheffield, and I applied to carry in Birmingham in memory of Dad, and that's what I did.
That's a bit. How did you find the day when you carried the baton?
It sounds strange, but it was an amazing day. Like, we felt actually, it was a bit of a roller coaster. We met a lot of people who'd also obviously lost people to suicide. Some who'd lost parents like me, some who'd lost children, other relatives. So it was highly emotional, but actually to be surrounded by people who all kind of understood the grief a little bit more was amazing. And we left, both me and my husband left sort of thinking we wanted to do more.
Wow. So that was then the next day you were hounding Mike.
I was, yes. The very next day I was messaging Mike McCarthy, who's the founder, on LinkedIn, and saying, come on then, how do I get it to Derby? Because we actually felt a bit deflated the day after. So we were a bit like, oh, it was such an amazing day, and now we've got to go back to our day jobs and we want to do more. Yeah. And how do we make it more local to us?
No, it's lovely. So going back, I guess, you mentioned that you lost your dad to suicide. How was it when he was alive and stuff? Were there any signs for you? How old was he? Tell us a bit about your dad.
My dad was lovely. So he was 52 when he died. He'd been struggling for, I would say, prior to him getting a bad back, he actually hadn't. There was no signs of any mental health issues. And then he hurt his back and was put on medication. And around the same time, he was also redeployed with work. So it was quite a few months, possibly about a year before that he started having the back pain. That's all a bit vague to me, other than nearer the time, because then what happened with the redeployment and this medication he was on, we didn't realise the side effects. And I did know he was really down because I was at university at the time, and I used to give him a call and he'd often get upset on the phone. And that was heartbreaking. I'd end up ringing my mum and saying, can you go and check on him? Because she just worked up at a school behind the house. So I would say now there were signs, but I don't think I ever thought, until when I actually found out what he'd done, I don't think I ever thought that would happen, because he was always like, he was always there. I was really close to my dad. We used to do all sorts together. He read all my university essays. We'd go out for a drink on a Friday night together. he was a very gentle man, and he was somebody that I confided in and spoke to a lot.
That's lovely. And I guess, how was it for you? You know, where were you at uni? Was it far away? You know, that distance must have been quite hard when you were
So
hearing
I was at Keele, so over Stoke-on-Trent way, and I used to speak to him most days. And like I say, it was just strange to hear him so upset. But you know, he went to see the doctor the week before he passed away, and he was just continued on the medication. And I think part of it was he wasn't sleeping either. So obviously the lack of sleep is terrible, and I don't think that helped his sort of mental state either.
No. Before that, you know, you said you were really close with him. What was it like? You know, I guess everything must have just been like a normal sort of family.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, you wouldn't have... Dad did everything, which I think possibly was part of the catalyst when he felt he couldn't do anything. So before you had to have like registered plumbers and electricians and everything, my dad did everything in the house. He was very practical. He enjoyed his work. We did a lot together as a family. We were close, and like I say, we were really close in that he always took an interest in everything I did. But yeah, there was nothing really until he got ill with his back that gave us any signs.
Yeah, when you did start to notice him declining and stuff, I guess you know it's probably not a topic that you were really aware of, was it, before?
No, I don't think, you know, you never heard back then the words mental health first aiders. You sort of knew people who maybe were on tablets because they were depressed or stressed, but there was nothing really talked about. Not like now. Obviously I talk about it more because of Dad and because of what I'm doing with the Baton of Hope, but even in workplaces it's a lot more talked about now, probably still not enough, but a lot more than it was then. So his work offered him no support through his redeployment, not from a mental health point of view. And so I think, you know, that's why he felt a bit fobbed off, really.
Yeah. What were some of those signs, I guess, that you did notice? You obviously you were quite far away, but looking back, I guess, is it be more of a reflection on what you could have picked up on?
Yeah, from what I've learned from you and other people through the Baton of Hope, it's definitely like he did used to get really upset and quite... he would actually cry on the phone to me when I rang him. What's interesting now is, when I've reflected on it, is I spoke to him. I was away the weekend before he died with uni. A few of us had gone away for a weekend. And when I spoke to him over that weekend, he seemed fine. And, you know, what I've learnt now is that can often be a sign of what's to come, unfortunately. You know, he'd prepped it was my 21st birthday the month after, and he'd been prepping for that and bought me a new like stereo system. Not that anyone has one of them anymore. So I think, you know, now when I reflect back on it, probably if you were in the same situation with somebody, I would think about it more now. Yeah. But as I say, back then it wasn't really spoken about at all.
I guess running up to that, did you notice did that change continue, I guess, when you spoke to him?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that weekend he seemed okay, and then on the Tuesday I called and couldn't get through to him, and that's when he'd taken his own life. Yeah.
How was it for your mum as well? I don't know if you ever spoke to her about it.
We don't go into a huge amount of detail on it. I think when he died, Mum, obviously, like myself, we were absolutely devastated. And my mum's first thing was, will people think he's a coward? That really old school way of thinking about it, because in my head you have to be very, very brave to take your own life, and you have to have got to a point where you can't see a way out. So she was really, really worried about that, and we're not Catholic, but I went to Catholic school and Mum works in Catholic school, and actually what was really nice is the priest came to see us, and she said to him, you know, will he not go to heaven because he's taken his own life? And the priest sort of allayed all her fears and made her feel better about that. Yeah. But my mum's really struggled, I think, over the years. Even with me doing stuff, she sometimes struggles. It's quite hard for her because, you know, and we both went through phases of anger and upset with Dad because, you know, we felt like we could have helped him. Yeah. But I think he was so poorly, and the lack of sleep and things was just absolutely messing with his head. But my mum's really starting to get involved with the Baton of Hope and asking questions about it and wanting to understand a little bit more, which is great from my point of view, because I think it's helping her a little bit.
That's lovely. Yeah, it sounds like it was a real catalyst of just quite a few different factors that, you know, must have been really difficult for your dad
Definitely it was.
to get with. And I'd like to think now there's a lot more support out there for people. How was it, you know, for you dealing with that? You were so young, like 20 years old, to be able to deal with it. What was it like?
It was, I think I went into autopilot, so I don't think I actually properly grieved until quite a few years later, which was actually triggered by then losing my father-in-law in a completely different way. But I was very close with him as well, and he's same name as my dad. They were both called Rob. And I think I went into autopilot to look after Mum.
Yeah.
Because I was at uni, I was doing my final. It was just before I was doing my finals. It was just before I was 21, so it was supposed to be this huge, big time. And actually, it was really quite difficult. I was very lucky to have an amazing group of friends around me at uni, all who knew my dad, because he used to come up and help. He helped us move into our house. He took on the dodgy landlady. You know, he knew some of their parents as well through that. So I was lucky in that when I went back to uni, I had a lot of support, and the university supported me as well. But it was really difficult to sort of keep going. But I kept going for Mum. But I do think it did have like a triggering effect then later on, like I say, when we lost Simon's dad. And then when I had my daughter, and well, when we got married, because obviously my dad wasn't there to give me away, so my cousin, who's also called Rob, there's a lot of Robs in this story, gave me away. And then when I had Ivy, and the birth wasn't straightforward and everything, so there's lots of things that I've needed quite a lot of therapy for following it, and a lot of it comes from that trauma of losing dad.
What I guess what have been some of the emotions that you've felt and you've had to, I guess, deal with when cause I can imagine it's been a bit of a roller coaster for you.
I think the key thing I struggle with, and again that I've learned probably through therapy, I haven't really had the anger bit with dad as much. I think Mum probably felt that a little bit more, which I understand. I think for me, I have a fear of loss, a really bad fear of loss, because my dad, I was so close with my dad that I kind of always thought he'd be around, and it absolutely breaks my heart that he's never met Simon. He's never seen Ivy.
That is a loss not meeting Simon.
It is a loss not meeting Simon, yeah. And obviously not seeing Ivy. And I think so I do have issues with, I get very attached to people, and I struggle if...
Really?
Yeah. Like you, Luke. You're stuck with me now. But yeah, it's. I think I go through more that I really miss Dad when I'm having a stressful time, or if there's something that's bothering us at home, or when I'm stressed about work. Dad would have been somebody who I'd have gone to speak to about it, and Dad's never knew me working, because other than part-time jobs during college and uni, but I think he'd have been the one I'd have gone to. And sometimes it's not anger, it's just like, God, I wish you were here, because I just feel like you could give me a bit of advice on this. You know, he was really good if I was having boyfriend problems pre-Simon. And even if it was just a hug or something like that, he just had a way about him, and I think that's what I struggle with the most. I just miss him at times like that. Yeah,
I guess have you found a way to, I don't know, do you take that step back sometimes and think, well, what would he say?
I do try to. I mean, I'm not the most level-headed at times, but I think with age, I think I do that a little bit more now, because I kind of think about how he'd react to things more so, because he was more level-headed and calming.
Yeah, that's really nice. Wow. What, I guess, what helped you sort of get through it? You said, you didn't probably get the support you needed straight away, in terms of you had the social support, you had the family support, but maybe more clinical support that would have been beneficial. Yeah, what helped you, I guess, get through? Because it's a massive thing just to carry on for quite a number of years, I guess, before you did.
I think I just kind of, initially afterwards, like I say, I went to sort of autopilot with Mum, and then lots happened because I left uni. I had to, I started a job, and then I think I did have a bit of a wobble around the Christmas time because I was working long hours in the job I was in, and I saw a therapist, a counsellor through the NHS just once for one session, and had a good cry, and that seemed to help me for a bit.
Yeah.
But I think I literally just and probably some of my friends and Simon would attest to this, because it wasn't long after that I met Simon. I just threw myself into everything.
Yeah.
And probably did that for too long before then going to, I had another counselling sessions after Simon's dad died, but probably didn't target the therapy I needed better. But I have always been able to talk about it. So whilst I was, going at 110 miles an hour, I have been quite matter of fact about it, which in some ways has helped. But as some therapists have told me, in some ways I needed to do the grieving bit as well. And that's what I've struggled with. But I think because I could talk about it, a lot of my friends would listen. And if somebody asked me how Dad died, I didn't lie about it. I told them.
Yeah.
And I let them feel uncomfortable about it, because we need to talk about it more.
Yeah,
really.
no, definitely, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Did it all hit you at once, or did it slowly come out, all of the grief and the sort of pain around it all?
I think in the first few days afterwards, it was horrendous. I mean, I still remember the night, because I had to be fetched from university by two friends of the family. One who was my dad's best friend, and then my godkid's mum, who lived down the road. And she actually found my dad. So how she found it in her to actually come in the car to uni, I don't know. And that was, I remember me and mum didn't really sleep that night. We were just, it didn't feel real. And the next few days were a bit of a blur. And then I think, like I say, after that, I just carried on. And then I did have, I don't suppose it was a breakdown, but Simon had been away with his family, and I'd been up north to stay with my family. And when I came back, I just couldn't get out of bed. And I think it was just I'd had a lovely week with my family up north. And I was just really struggling. I'd got to go away with work, and just the thought of I'd got to go to France. I remember the thought of travelling to France just absolutely petrified me, and it never had bothered me before. And I just couldn't get out of bed, and Simon had to ring the doctor for me, and I got signed off for a couple of weeks. And again, that was kind of, I think it was just, there was a lot going on at that point. It was when Simon's dad was poorly, and do you know what I mean? So it was things like that.
Sounds
that just
really overwhelming.
it was,
deal with.
I think that's when it hit me. That's when I started having some counselling again. But yeah, it's just in waves, I suppose. But I feel, and I think now with the work we're doing, every now and again it overwhelms me a little bit, just because we're talking about it more again. But luckily I'm surrounded by a lot of people who understand it, which makes it a little bit easier. Yeah,
no, it's really hard. I think sometimes that's what and stuff forget, especially with like the Baton of Hope stuff, isn't it? That we do talk about it a lot, but a lot of the people that are involved in it already is because they've lost people.
Yeah.
And it's about, not forgetting.
Yeah.
Forgetting the people at the heart of it, isn't it? Looking forward then, when you sort of turned it into, not into a positive, but as in you were making that positive difference and stuff. Your dad's obviously a massive motivation behind it, but what's it been like? I guess you did a bit with Calm and then now into the Baton of Hope. What's that journey been like?
I mean, it's been, I know I've used this word a lot, but it has been a roller coaster, but it's gone very quick. I mean, I think I carried the baton in July 2023, got in contact with Mike, and he said, oh, look, we won't do it next year because this year's nearly killed us. But we'll do it in 2025 and there'll be a process. And so I started pretty much then to contact people who would potentially be willing to help me. And I think it was the November of that year, a few of us got together to talk about where we'd go next. So I think that's when we linked with like Steve Whittle and Hannah and all those different people and Becky, and then obviously James and yourself got linked with us through Mike McCarthy. And actually, I think we were probably the most prepared when it came to putting the bid in, because we'd been talking about it for so long.
That's the end of part one. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. In the description below, we've popped lots of information where you can find support. Part two will be out in a few weeks, where we'll be able to hear more of Claire's story and more around the Baton of Hope. Thank you.